And what we have here is called a corner post. You might ask, why do I have electric wire if I already have this wooden post and T-post? Have you ever heard the saying, if you build a fence that will keep goats in, it will also be able to keep water in? Or if you build a fence for goats, go ahead and install a ladder inside so that the goats can get out easier? Well, today in this video, we're going to cover why that's just not true. We're going to cover how easy it is to fence in an area for goats, and that the people who say all these sayings and funny jokes about not being able to keep goats in probably don't know how to build a fence properly. So without further ado, let's get into this video. Now, before we get started, I'm no professional fence installer. My dad, he has a little bit of knowledge of fence, and between the two of us and YouTube, we installed all of the fence that we have on our property for our goats. And what you have here is you have the main post right here, horizontal stabilizer post in the middle, and then your smaller brace post right here on this side. So when you start constructing your fence, you're going to start at a corner. And what we have here is called a corner post. And this is an 8-inch in diameter post. I think they're also 8 or 7 foot long. And that anchors the entire section of the fence for how many directions you have going off of it. It could be 2, as in right here where we have one going this way and one going this way. It could be up to 4 sections, one going this way, that way, front and back. All 4 sections could be anchored on this post. So this is a key post in your operation. That's why it has to be the biggest and the fattest. And then right here we have a horizontal support post. This is very important in keeping your fences tight and make sure you have adequate tension. And this joins your second post, size post, in what's called your corner brace. So this is a 6-inch diameter post. It's a step down from your large corner post. And what you have here is you have the main post right here, horizontal stabilizer post in the middle, and then your smaller brace post right here on this side. And then what you do to make sure that this corner post does not coming up out of the ground with any tension that is provided by this tight field fence that we have right here, is you want to take a cable and go from the bottom of your main post to about halfway, a little bit above halfway on your second support post over here. You run a cable up down here, bring it back around, and you tie it off, and then you get a ratchet and you tighten it up. And what that does, it draws this post tight into the main post. And then when you put the wire on the main post and you drag it that way, and then you tighten the wire, the force of that wire tightening is not going to pull this post out of the ground. Instead, the force that's pulling this way will balance the force that pulls that way, and it'll just keep it steady in the ground where it is. So we'll get more into this in a later video where we actually show the installation of more fence, but just as a brief overview today, just know that on your main corner post, you need a horizontal support, a smaller corner post, and then a wire tensioner that combines them all together and holds them in place. So the type of fencing that I have is what's called a welded wire fence. Some goat owners have high tensile electric, which are just single strands of electric wire spaced out going up and down the post. Usually there's 7 to 8 strands of this wire, but this is what's called a welded wire, welded web wire. So this is basically a barrier that the goats cannot get through because it has vertical spacing and horizontal spacing. And what's super important about this welded web wire fence is you want to make sure you have the proper size squares. So this is a sheep and goat fence by the brand Red Brand. They sell it at Tractor Supply, Rural King, those type retailers. And it's a sheep and goat fence because it has 4-inch by 4-inch square holes. So that prevents the goats from getting their heads stuck in the fence. That prevents the baby goats from escaping the fence. Now, if you have like a Nigerian dwarf or a very small goat, they might be able to get out of the little 4-inch holes, but not likely. It's a very small hole for a goat to try to get out of. 4-inch by 4-inch squares are what you need. They have a type of fence called a field fence. You don't want this fence. The squares are longer and taller along certain portions of the fence. Goats can stick their horns through, try to eat grass on the other side, and they can get stuck in there. And if you don't check on them and they're stuck for a long period of time, they'll be dead when you come back. Also, the baby goats can escape out of these bigger holes. So you want to avoid field fence or any type of fence with a hole larger than 4-inch by 4-inch. So this wire is going to be your highest cost. So when I first started, this wire was about $269 a roll. Now it's close to $400. But like I said, that's just one of those costs that you're going to have to eat. The fence is so good that the Air Force is out here looking at it today. So as you put up your welded web wire and you run it to your other corner that you have sectioned out for the fence to end, you need posts in the middle to help support the weight of that wire and keep it upright and tight. So we have these, in this case, as you can see, these wooden support posts that run the length of this fence. And you can do wooden, you can do T-post, you can do metal round post, just whatever post you have. But what I like to do is on the section of the fence that faces the property, like what you would be looking at when you, here we have a metal building where we have just supplies and all. When you look out the window, this is the front of the fence that you see right here. So I've chosen to do it all in these wood posts. Just for aesthetics, you could do T-post, you could do metal post like I suggested earlier, but just for aesthetics, I choose to do all wood on the front of my fence. And with the wooden post, they're just a little bit more secure than a T-post because you can staple the wire to the post all the way up the wooden post. So with those, you can space them out a little bit further. So I have 12 feet in between each wooden post. So you come off your corner right here, 12-foot wood post, measure out 12 more feet wood post, and then you just do that until you get towards the end. Now if you get to your last post and there's like 8 foot between the corner and your previous post, you can just go ahead and put it there. A lot of times you're not gonna get an exact 12 foot between each one just because your total run of fence may not divide easily by 12, so it's just something you're gonna have to adjust on the fly. But when you do a fence with T-posts like I have on this section over here, so here we have a section that has wooden post and T-post. So on the longer sections where it's more cost effective to incorporate T-post and wooden posts, I do that. So this is the longest run of the fence. It's about 400 foot total, and I have them spaced out in this order. So they come off the corner post in this order. You have 4 metal T-posts and then a wooden post. So what that does, it still gives me a very tight fence line and it gives me the support I need. But what you have to do when you're using metal T-posts, you have to space them a little bit closer. So these T-posts are spaced 10 foot apart as compared to the 12 foot with a wooden post. So with a T-post, there's not as much mass in the ground. You can secure it pretty tightly, the welded web wire to the T-post, but it's just not as a secured fit as a wooden post. So that's why I have them a little bit closer, just to make sure that wire is securely attached to these T-posts and make sure it's not going anywhere in a high wind, storm, if the goat's rubbing on it or anything like that. So 10 foot spacing for metal T-post, and you do 4 T-posts and then a wooden post. Now you still want to incorporate some wooden posts in here just to get that firm, secure attachment to the post with the welded web wire. But you can space them out. You don't have to use all wooden posts like I mentioned, but just make sure you add some in here. I recommend every 4th post, do 4 T-posts, then a wooden post. You could do 5 T-posts, then a wooden post, but just make sure you have some in here to really attach that welded web wire to your post. The main thing you want to avoid is having a sloppy fence. You don't want there to be any give. You want it to be tight. You want it to stay tight for years and years, and that's what makes a good fence, because if there's any give in it, it can, like if the goats press up against it, they could lower the height of the fence and then they can start getting out. So you want to make sure your fence is tight. So coming back to our corner post here, let's go over some of the height. So this fence wire, this goat and sheep welded web fence wire, is 48 inches tall. So you want to make sure that your posts come out of the ground above 48 inches, because what I've incorporated here is also have electric wire on this fence. So what I do is I usually bring my post about 52 to 54 inches out of the ground so that I can have enough room for my 48-inch welded web wire, and then I can also come about 2 to 3 inches above that and put in my electric wire. So you might ask, why do I have electric wire if I already have this expensive, very secure welded web wire? Well, the electric fence is here to prevent predators. So in my area in South Alabama, we have bobcats, coyotes, raccoons, foxes, all types of critters that can easily climb this welded web wire and then get into the goat pen. So this electric fence on top prevents any critters, predators from coming over the top of my fence. So down here at the bottom, we also have an electric wire that's about 2 to 3 inches off the ground that prevents any critters, predators from digging under the wire. That's a very common thing you'll see with predators. If they know they can't go over, they'll just start digging under. So this electric wire along the bottom prevents them from digging under. So as long as I've had my goats for the 4 years that I've had them, I have had zero issues with predators. This setup has been 100% effective at stopping coyotes, bobcats, raccoons, anything from getting inside my fence. One night I was coming down to check on my goats, probably about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I was riding around the perimeter and I had my flashlight and I was just shining it to see. I was expecting some babies to be dropping soon, so I was just out checking. And on the opposite side of me, I could see a coyote sitting on the fence row looking in, but he wasn't digging, he wasn't trying to climb over, he was just looking. And I went and checked. There was, you could see he dug a little bit, and then he must have got popped by the electric and he took off. So I have been very, very pleased with this setup. It has worked, like I said, 100% for me so far, and I don't expect it to fail anytime soon. So I would highly recommend adding electric to your fence. It's just perfect. So it'll prevent predators from getting in, but it also prevents the goats from getting out. 48 inches is pretty high for a normal goat to be jumping over, but then you add the 2 to 3 extra inches with the electric wire, and it's going to eliminate any climbing out just whatsoever. So if you have an object close to the fence they can climb on top of and then jump off of that over the fence, that's not the fence's problem, that's your problem for putting that there. So if you have just a fence with no obstacles or anything for them to climb on top of near the fence, you're not going to have any problems with escapee goats. So make sure that the area right up against your fence is clear from these obstructions and these obstacles that the goats love to climb on to begin with. And if they see an opportunity to jump out, they're going to take it. So don't give them the opportunity. It's as simple as that. So having a strong fence is nothing if you have a weak gate. So as you can see, this is a gate that has this mesh paneling across the front of it, and this is going to prevent the goats from climbing out through the gate. So you may have seen these gates that just have the tubes that just run horizontally across the gate. Those are no good for goats. They'll squeeze their way out of those and they'll be out before you even have it shut properly. So make sure you get one of these gates that has the mesh wire panel across the bottom half of it, bottom 2/3 of it really. And then I come along this top, this is usually open right here, and I put some type of chicken wire or something similar to close up this top third. I don't think a goat would climb out of it, but I'm not going to give them the chance to. So just go ahead and seal off any holes that you think might allow a goat to escape out of, and it'll just save you that worry. And then running across the top, again, I have this electric wire and it's attached right here by a disconnect. So when I come in and out, drive in, bring hay, feed, whatever, I can pop that off, hook it to the gate, and I can go in. So the strong fence is pointless without a strong gate too. So make sure you pick out the right gate. So as I just mentioned with the top strand of electric wire and the bottom strand of electric wire, on the inside of the goat's fence, I have a strand of electric wire that runs about halfway along the inside perimeter of the whole fence. And why I have this wire is it prevents the goats from rubbing up against this inside section of the fence. Now when they rub up against it, it takes out the tightness of it, it makes it become slack, it makes it where you can start bending it, and it just is not good for the fence. It'll take years of life off the fence. So what I do is, like I just mentioned, this electric wire keeps them off of it. It prevents them from even coming close to the fence. So it really serves two purposes. It keeps them from rubbing up against it, and they know that when they get close to this, they're gonna get shot. So it prevents them from even getting close to this, right up beside the fence in general. So if the goats are grazing, they'll usually come up within about 1 to 2 foot of the fence, and they don't come any closer. So they know in their minds that this fence equals pain, so they just stay away from it, which in the end prevents them from trying to escape even more. So they would not be physically able to, but now they don't even want to try it. So it's very beneficial to have this inside wire running along your fence. It keeps it tight, it keeps years and years of life on the fence, and it's just highly recommended. I had a section of fence that we completed, and then I got sidetracked and I did not put in this inside electric wire. And over a course of a couple months, when you would be driving down the fence row, you could see where they would bow out the fence from rubbing up against it. They'd have their preferred sections, like between 2 wooden posts that they'd rub up and scratch themselves the most on. And that piece of fence, you could see it literally bow outward, like going down the line. So I just stopped what I was doing and I just went ahead and I put it up that day, because it's just ruining the fence. So if you have goats, inside electric wire, it's a must. So that basically covers it for a general overview of the fence that I have and the fence that I recommend you guys install. As I said previously, we're gonna be adding some more fence to the property here within the next few months, and we're gonna video the whole process and show you a step-by-step guide. And like I mentioned, it's not hard to do it all. I had no prior fencing experience, but now I could go run a mile of this fence if I needed to, because at the end of the day, it's just putting the post in the ground straight, getting the wire tight, and attaching it properly to the post that you select. So there's really not that much more to it, but you might be asking, why am I gonna go to all this trouble and this expense just for the fence? And if you're gonna be serious about raising goats and keeping them inside of your area, if you have neighbors that are directly beside you, they're not gonna want your animals in their yard eating their garden or whatnot. So it's your responsibility to keep your animals secure in your area. So you need to do it properly the first time. Just eat the cost, like I mentioned, and just do it once and you'll never have to worry about it. Like I said, never had any goats escape. So I'm very pleased with the setup that I had. And another benefit to this style of fence is that you can use it for a variety of different animals. So with goats, they are the most likely to escape from any type of fence just because they're so agile. They're very curious animals and they're strong, so they can just jump over something if it's not high enough or secured enough. So if you fence this in properly to keep goats in, on this same fence setup, you could keep cows, sheep, possibly horses, just depending on how tall the horse is. That electric wire on the top is really going to prevent them from trying to go over the top of it. But you can keep many different types of animals in here. If you even put an additional inside wire, maybe on the first couple inches on the inside, to prevent like a hog from rooting out under the fence, you could keep hogs in this fence. You just got to have that electric wire right above the ground where they try to root out, they'll get shocked. But you could definitely keep hogs in this fence. So if you fence off an area like this that will keep goats in, if you want down the road to incorporate some cows, if you have enough land to help with the worm control, which that's a whole nother video in and of itself, but you could definitely put cows in here. They're going to respect that electric wire just like the goats do. So take your time, do it right, invest in the upfront, and you'll reap the rewards on the back end. I've had this fence 3 or 4 years now. It's still in great shape. It's tight. The goats respect it. They don't get near it. And it's going to serve me many, many more years, and it's paid for. So I can just forget about it now, and I can just focus on other things instead of coming and fixing the fence every 3 or 4 weeks where improper installation or you got the wrong type of wire. You'd be just fighting it the rest of the time you have your goats. So do it right the first time. It's not going to be fun, it's going to be expensive, but once it's done, you don't have to worry about it, and you can focus on other things. So if you guys like this video, drop us a like, maybe consider subscribing to the channel, it helps us out a lot, and we'll see you guys in the next video.